recently, our family has been doing a lot of improv singing, just like little silly songs.
Such as Skinny Bumble.
Skinny bamboo, what you gonna do with the skinny bamboo?
Skinny Bumble, gun for you. Skinny Bumble, what you gonna do?
Skinabumble. You can check that out
Yep.
on YouTube. It's actually been really, really fun. And so maybe we should talk a little bit about, I don't know, the benefits of improv singing.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot that comes into, I think there's both like improv singing, improv speaking, and I think that there's a lot of, public speaking in general, but especially just improv.
Public improv singing.
Yes, that is, yep, that's definitely a challenge. I think that there is really something to improvisation that really forces you to just kind of think about what do you really want to express in that moment, because oftentimes I think that, you know, we can just be busy and not really even be aware of our emotions and our thoughts, and that can just be, you know, something that you kind of either force yourself to do, either through something like improv singing or speaking, as well as just something like journaling where you're like trying to become more aware of those things. So I think that
you're digging deep here.
Yeah. I think specifically for me it's been helpful in terms of like, what am I even like thinking in this moment?
For me, it's helpful for getting out of my shell because something like that, it just pulls you right out. Especially the public version.
Yeah.
And once you get over the nerve-wracking experience of literally doing improv,
it's probably like the most vulnerable thing you can do.
It's the most vulnerable, exactly, thing you could do is public improv singing. Like, I don't think I would have the guts to go up in front of a crowd, and it's hard enough in front of just your family, we have a really strong family relationship. But in terms of tearing you out of your shell, if you practice that, like, regularly, you don't need to do full-on improv singing with, like, a stage and everything. But, like, I don't know, dance down the sidewalk while you're taking your dog for a walk or something. It's so freeing to feel that of just not worrying or caring and just grooving.
Well, I think there's something to, because there's, like, this whole field of, like, cognitive behavioral therapy where it's like, if let's say you have social anxiety, there's kind of an inherent like, I'm avoiding social situations because it's making me anxious, but then if you then kind of force yourself to go into social situations that you would normally avoid, you're kind of untraining that anxiety through forcing yourself to do those actions. But then there's even a step further of like, this is like the most vulnerable thing I could be doing, and then it makes everything else pale in comparison.
Yes.
Or it's like, okay,
it's like going to a amusement park, going on the hardest, most terrifying, most traumatic ride.
Yeah.
And then all of the other rides are just like cruising, you know?
Yep. That's a great example. I mean,
I have not had the courage to do that yet, but I can imagine the feeling.
Well, I mean, when I was 8, I went on the Tower of Terror, and that was...
And by that, you mean Daddy had you go on
I mean,
tower.
Like, yeah.
I don't think you weren't aware of it.
I don't think I ever went on a roller coaster before that.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. But then afterwards, I'm like, oh, these other ones are great. It's like, there aren't sudden drops, and it's like, you can actually see what's going on.
And there aren't creepy clowns coming at you or something like that.
Yeah, so I think, but I think that is a good analogy because, you know, there's definitely, everybody feels that kind of anxiety of just even talking to another person. And then it's like, okay, now you're singing impromptu in front of other people, and then it's kind of, I think,
and
it's a great
it'll be very cringy at first. It'll be very awkward, but if you just keep practicing that of getting out of your shell, and like you said, untraining that anxiety, it's so great because you don't want to feel that, right? You don't want to feel that pressure of just like, ooh, what's everyone thinking of me?
Well, I think there's something really interesting in terms of the qualitative differences between the just normal communication, like I'm just speaking to you right now, versus like, I think that singing has just this really weird quality to it, where it has such.
What do you mean by weird?
I think it just has such a powerful emotional, connection with people.
Oh yeah,
that is different than that is just qualitatively different than just saying the same thing or like trying to communicate that through just speaking regularly, which is, I think, very interesting. And I think that that's something that is also really powerful in terms of how do you communicate very kind of complex and nuanced things, especially things that regard, emotions and paradigms and perceptions and very, subjective human experience, because there is something about music that is more universal.
I actually wrote a project about this. I think it was called Types of Communication, the Power of Music. And really, I feel like that is such an amazing way to communicate emotions, really. You just expressing emotions. Because you could talk about it and you could use your body language. But there's something about music that has this impact where it really communicates that feeling, and you can feel very connected to a song per se.
Well, I also think that there has been this kind of shift in terms of looking at the arts in terms of just like really switching purely towards consumption, because before it was like everybody sang, everybody danced, because there was nothing else to do. Like either you do that or you just are very bored.
Well, I mean, before technology and all of that, there wasn't much to do to entertain yourself. There was talking. And then there was also singing. There was music and playing your little banjo to the family. And that was just something people did for fun. To be happy.
Right. And I think that there's also something that is like inherently from that creative process of not just singing somebody else's song or listening to somebody else's song, but creating your own, was something that I think it's just very natural, but because it's just so void of our culture nowadays, it feels very unnatural. It feels as though it is something to be consumed, that it's something that only a very, very small percentage of the population should be practicing.
It's just been so standardized. Like even with dancing or something. Like there's a degree in dancing in college. It's like, so what? I'm moving my body. This could be called dancing right now. And you do it to have fun, right? And it's like, oh, you can't do the arts unless you're good at it. And it's like, what is good? It's so subjective that it's like, you don't want to standardize that.
No, it's like, what is the purpose? Is the purpose to try to create something that the mass public would enjoy consuming, this is something that Bo Burnham created a song of like called Repeat Stuff, that was basically like making fun of the standardization.
Oh, I so want to hear that.
Yeah, it was just hilarious because the chorus is literally just repeat stuff, repeat stuff, repeat stuff, and it was just like making fun of how it's just like
that is a lot of the songs these days.
Yeah, it's like you need to make a chorus that's so catchy that you immediately recognize it and it's stuck in your head.
And you immediately know how to sing it because it's just repeat stuff, and repeating stuff, some more stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, that's what you have to do in order to create a song that's going to be, successful to the and the mass public. But it's like, what is the purpose of arts if not to express your own subjective experience, which may not resonate with everybody. The point is that it resonates with you because it's coming from you. So I think that that's something that is like, if nobody is familiar with practicing that. Like, you go to music class and you learn somebody else's song. It's always somebody else's creation. And I think that is really missing out on the true purpose. That's getting rid
of a lot of, well, like you said, missing out on a lot of what music is for, which is expressing yourself. And you could sift through all of the songs out there and maybe find one that kind of resonates with you. But what if you create, your own song? And just that part of it, it doesn't need to be improv. But I found that a great way to express my feelings is to sing about them. And I know that sounds really, really cheesy, but it's really, really true.
Yeah, well, I think that, it is something that is...
Like, even just saying that makes me crazy.
Yeah, I just think that it's something that can also help with just greater... just creativity in the sense of just being able to break out of what is habitual, what is just kind of unconscious, in terms of there's all these things that we are used to doing that's just kind of the path of least resistance of, we go out in public and, we shake somebody's hand, or we wave at them, or we say, hey, good morning, or how are you? And then we, do things every day because it's familiar to us. It doesn't take extra energy. We just, we have these habits that we do, and there are things that are expected of us, and it's like, okay, sure, that's great, and that's necessary in a lot of case scenarios, but then I think that you can kind of miss out on some of the intentionality that is kind of required in creative expression, right? You kind of have to be there in the moment, and you're creating something new, and it's inherently breaking you out of whatever you're used to, or whatever is, most comfortable, right? It's not comfortable to sing in front of other people.
No.
So it's
just... Well, until you do it a lot.
Yeah. And so but I think that is really helpful in terms of just kind of inducing intentionality in everything else by certain intentional practices. And it's not that you need those things in order to be intentional, but it's something that is kind of so different from what people are generally used to that it can kind of break you out of like that same mindset, that same paradigm, that same perception that you have, that same mental rut that can sometimes develop, then can just kind of be broken in an instant if you're like, I'm going to intentionally do this thing that is just something that is so different.